Welcome to The Printer's Edge with Rock LaManna, a podcast about how to sell, buy, or build a printing business. Now here are your hosts, Rock LaManna and Ken Okel.
Welcome to the Printer's Edge podcast presented by the LaManna Alliance. Hi, I'm Ken Okel here with Rock LaManna. Today, we are talking about Rock LaManna's road to Harvard. May not have heard this story before. It's his 30th anniversary, so we thought it'd be something good to talk about today.
Awesome. I'm ready to go.
It happened 30 years ago. That's the beginning of the story.
That's right. 1988 was one hell of a year for me. There's no doubt about it.
So where were you in terms of your business, in terms of where you were in the printing world?
And let's see here. I started in the industry full-time when I was 21 years old. So from 21, I started to learn the business from the ground up.
Sure.
And including pricing, started to learn how to read about job cost, understanding processes. And don't forget, we spent close to 90 to 100% of our time with 3M Company in St. Paul, Minnesota. So we were always working on advances, innovation, new products, new opportunities that you really did not have any experience with. So 3M would come to us to ask, how would you convert this? How would you print it? How would you die cut it? How would you apply it? Whatever. So there was a lot of process engineering to understand, especially very specialized markets such as automotive, space, medical. These are all high-tech applications. So it's very exciting. So fast forward, I became the vice president of the company. And I'm one of 11 children. 9 of us were in the business. And in the mid-70s, that was 75 when I started, 1980 is when my father purchased 100% of Womella Specialty. And of course, that gave me a great opportunity to become more involved with the leadership and the culture of the employees and so on. So once again, I couldn't get enough information and learning. But at the same time, I'm married, 3 children, spending 12, 16-hour days, 7 days a week. We had a tremendous workforce. Everything was exciting. Every day was different. Every day was new and exciting. And we wanted to invest in the company. And my father decided, you know what? I'm going to Florida. So he decided to move to Florida with my mother. Once again, 11 children. I'm married also with 3 children. I put a lot of time into strategy. How are we going to grow the business? And what type of opportunities looking forward would we take? So in 1985, I had some good friends at 3M that said, you know, Rock, for you to grow this company globally, we'd like to work with you. And for you to do that, we think you should get some more talent.
So you kind of knew that there was stuff that you needed to know if you were going to continue to be successful.
Yes. And for us to grow, we had to change. And with that change came very smart people that would advise us with new opportunities that we had to make a choice. And which one would we go with? And don't forget, these were coming basically from 3M. 3M, Minnesota Mining out of St. Paul, Minnesota, had 9,000 engineers. And we were servicing them for over 40 years. So 3M trusted us. They worked with us, and they would ask us to do things that were very confidential and needed to be experimented on. So we were a beta site for 3M in a lot of ways. So with that, I needed to bring in some more talent, which included systems people, which included sales and marketing people, while I would focus on the vision and the culture of the 100-plus employees. And that was in 1988, 85, 88. I said to myself, well, hold it. I need some additional education. How do I get into the major leagues where I could feel comfortable and confident to grow with 3M Company and take the risks that they were taking as a family business?
Rock, you knew you needed to up your game. What happened next?
As I mentioned before, I couldn't get enough. There was so much activity, so much new technology coming out. We went CAD CAM between 80 and 85, new technologies, new services, new capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, a gentleman, a good friend of mine, recommended that I develop more of a, should I say, succession team. My father was looking at potentially retiring. I was in my 30s. I had brothers and sisters that weren't as interested as I was in succession. So we started talking about succession. So where we went basically was, this recommendation was, Rock, why don't you apply, like I have, for a Bush Fellowship? Here in St. Paul, Minnesota, a Bush Fellowship was well known by 3M Company. It was a foundation that basically awards scholarships to business people that are looking at future leaders, per se.
So this could be your way to pay for this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because at that time, you're talking about a $100,000 program, no matter what program. And today's dollars is probably over $250,000 for this.
So not easy to come up with when you got a family. And
no, exactly. 3 kids, full-time working, looking at the future, growing the business. And so I went to apply. I went to get to understand more about the process and so on. Well, here I was interviewed by a committee. And there was a committee about 5, and they asked me about my background. And I was a little intimidated, because it was like an interview that I've never had before. And at the same time, I had to qualify. And the qualification was I was rejected the first time.
Oh.
And I'm like, why am I rejected? They said, well, Rock, you need to generate an organization chart. So I went, wow. And how much time are you going to give me to develop this organization chart? We're going to give you a year. A year? Yes. Because you need to make sure for the growth of your company, when you're away for 3 years, you need to have a team in place to succeed you. And so I went back and I started looking at talent and at least positions. So we looked at our internal operations and people that were interested to grow the business. We basically grew the company 5 times from that 1985 to 1983.
So they wanted to make sure that while you're learning all this new stuff, the company doesn't go belly up because you're not there for extended periods of time.
They did not want me to be the company to depend on me, because even though the program that I was applying for was going to be a full year, family and all, California, Stanford is where my advocate basically proposed. Well, because that's what he did.
Yeah.
Well, here, the committee started looking at my situation and said, oh, well, Rock, let's face it, number one, you're a hockey player. And I started laughing. Well, a couple of the committee members played hockey. And they played hockey back in the day for Harvard.
Ah, there's Harvard.
So that was their recommendation. Rock, we think you should look at Harvard before you look at Stanford. So I said, okay, let's do that. So I had an assignment. The assignment is build your organization, get a solid organization chart within a year, and go visit the Harvard program to see if that's something that would be suitable for you in your future. So I did. And you know what? It was for me. It met my criteria. I met some great people back in 1986, I believe it was. 1987, I went back, passed the committee, had the organization chart, and I started in 1988.
This was a multi-year process just to get to the classroom.
Yes, just to get to the classroom.
But in a way, that learning started before you even got to the classroom.
And what I really learned there was patience. Not only the patience to get very involved and committed and focused on talent, because we underestimated, and plus that, we were going CAD CAM, which was very, very unusual and basically a niche opportunity to go into CAD CAM at that time.
So you're enrolled in Harvard Business School in the Owner-President Management Program. What is that like?
Well, first of all, I was pretty intimidated. I believe there were 40 to 50 classmates from all over the world. I believe there were 12 different countries represented. Our company, Vomela Specialty at the time, was probably one of the smaller players, and it comes down to revenue. However, what I found out later as we worked together and networked, and usually it was all the networking, you really found out the appreciation of a small family business that had huge margins and had huge upside, and working with 3M. Plus, I'm in my 30s, mid-30s. These guys are in their 50s and 60s looking at me going, wow, I wish I could do it all over again. I looked at the situation and underestimated my input during this time because I was more of a creative person trying to come up with all these great ideas. I was listening more than I was participating. And that program is more or less case study. Harvard is more case study, and
is it almost like legal discussions, almost like how you think of law school?
It's very much of a debate. I forgot the movie that professor was out there, and it's basically that stadium seating.
Paper Chase, I think.
Paper Chase,
John
yes,
Houseman,
yes.
Yeah.
It was awesome because you were called on, and you better be prepared. And sometimes you felt foolish around all these, let's say, major league players. That I thought they were major league players, and I thought I was basically the rookie of this situation. But what I had that most of them didn't have was the global perception because of 3M. So 3M gave me this tremendous outlook and insight about how to grow a company because of not only their innovation, but their marketing. I can't say enough about it, but I'll tell you this, there was a lot of work every night. I'm talking about 4 to 5 hours, seriously, of homework. And I always wanted to be prepared. So even if you went out for dinner, that's a 2 or 3 hour dinner in downtown Boston, or even take a walk. And then you had to go back for 4 or 5 hours of work. You're already tired. I'd sleep 3 or 4 hours, get up, study again, because I wanted to be prepared for that whole day of essays and basically debate.
And it's interesting, too, because I could see sometimes a business owner may be nervous about going back into the classroom. You found out you didn't know as much as you knew, but you also found out you maybe knew more than you thought you knew.
Well, you really didn't know because it's a 3-week program, but it's a 12-month homework situation. And you always walked away with goals. What are your objectives for the next 12 months? And they had to be documented and reported on the next year. So even though it's a 12-week program over 3 years, it's really a 3-year intense program, but it's experience.
Yeah.
It's the real world.
It's like a laboratory, except the laboratory is your business.
Exactly. And you really go back and by the way, during that 3-year session, that series, there were people gone the next year. And you would find out that what would happen. People always want to know what would happen. And we had deaths, we had prisons, we had out of business. I mean, it was unbelievable. Some of the situations that went on.
Like survival of the fittest.
No, it was unbelievable.
Wow.
And so the fortitude and the perseverance, I mean, it was a workout. It was a boot camp, basically. It was a boot camp. So I probably, when I look way back 30 years, and I still have those connections, a lot of those connections, I'm still one of the younger guys. I'm in my 60s. These guys are 70s and 80s, already retired. So we'll talk a little bit about what I learned, but I'll tell you, it was a great experience, well worth it. And I appreciate the opportunity from my former business and the people that allowed me, which was my team, my executive team, and my father that backed me up, and my family that backed me up to do something like this.
It's important. This type of education, it's not just you, it's everyone having to sacrifice and make it possible. What were some of those major takeaways you had from this Harvard business education?
It was awesome because, and it's still going on, this program is still going on. It would be the 4 categories of what they always spoke about, which was leadership, which is the talent or the people. Then you have to have strategy. Very, very involved with a documented strategy. The third area is the execution of those strategies, the implementation, the strategy, how you're going to do it, always put a timeline on there. So that's why I'm always real heavy on roadmaps. And then last of all, which is probably number one with everyone else, is cash, finance. I really learned a lot about cash traps. I learned about where to invest, where not to invest. And the other issue here is when you're younger, you can take risks. How far do you want to go with a risk? Some people take larger risks than others, but I was very fortunate to have 3M in a way backing us up as being our number one client. And number two, my father in the 60s, I realized what he did to preserve wealth. Work hard, preserve wealth, at the same time, take risks. So it's a balancing act. And the key is, like my father would always say, is you got to have your health to be able to do something like this. And that's one of the reasons why I'm thankful.
So you eventually complete this education, and you found it was very useful for your future with the company because things were changing.
It was huge because I was very aggressive at 34, not knowing, because it wasn't my money. It was OPM, other people's money. All of a sudden, my father decides to sell a business, and he wants to go to market. And I thought, well, hold it here. I just work side by side with you. Aren't I the successor?
So he won't give it to you.
No.
But maybe...
Let's just call it a better opportunity than others would receive. Mm-hmm. And don't forget, I got 10 brothers and sisters and my parents, and they want to be fair to everyone.
So you've got to come up with a deal
yes,
that makes everybody happy, that meets with your father's satisfaction.
Yes. So what he wanted, though, was a cash deal. For cash, back in 1985, we started the process. So while I was at Harvard, I already knew the seed was set within the family that Rock's going to buy the business. Well, guess what? That wasn't an easy situation. And by the way, I had a great team. And the expectation was I was going to buy the company and I was going to retain my key employees that I handpicked that helped us grow this business. So it didn't work that way. In 1988, we started the formal process. We hired an attorney, we hired an accountant, and my father changed his mind. He decided, you know what, Rock, we're going to go to market and see what we can do.
Okay.
And Rock, you're going to get a piece if you prefer, but you're on your own financially. Uh-oh. Where do I go? The first thing I did was I hired an attorney, hired a valuation consultant, which provided me a valuation of understanding the business. The angel, back in those days, venture capitalists were called angels, and this angel was referred by an attorney, my father's attorney of all things. So there you go. We're going to do a deal. What kind of money does Rock have? Zero to be able to make an impact.
So you're trying to buy the company, but you don't necessarily have any money.
Exactly.
That's a challenge.
Exactly. And I'm in my 30s. And my father said, hey, I'm retiring. He's in his 60s, mid-60s, 65, I believe at that time, trying to cut his deal for Social Security and Medicare and all these things that people look at, and like I'm looking at today. In the meantime, I have to start negotiating with what I do have. And I start working with the banks. And I'm out of St. Paul, so I'm working with Wells Fargo, which is back at the time Northwest Bank, and U.S. Bank, which is today U.S. Bank. I started cutting deals. And I had to put everything on the line, including my kids, my family, my homes, whatever I had at the time. My partner, Tom, had 60% ownership. But he also backed me up with a personal guarantee. So that helped the situation.
Made it better for the bankers to think about.
Right. And you know, you got collateral, you got commitment, you have credibility, and so on. So they knew I was good, but I couldn't do it alone. So during this time, what I underestimated is a different partner than my father. I hired an attorney out of Pittsburgh, a Harvard Business School classmate.
Makes sense.
And he made an opportunity for me. He proposed, in fact, this was in the library at Harvard, saying, Rock, how is the acquisition going? I told him how it was going. Very emotional, especially with the family. He says, Rock, I highly recommend that you have an employment contract drawn up. And I'm like, what's that? Actually, yes, it was around 1990, mid-1990. And his specialty was sports, agents, athletes. And he wrote up contracts for the NFL. So I said, well, let's go with this. So all of a sudden, my father and my partner, Tom, and the attorneys thought they had everything set. Well, back in those days, we faxed. We faxed my contract that this is my guarantee, employment guarantee, and my structured 40% of the business, what would happen. I got a call very soon after that. My father's screaming at me, if this deal doesn't go through because of this contract, I'm selling 100% of the business to Tom.
But you were trying to protect your interests,
yes.
Making sure that it could work out for everybody, but especially you.
Yes. Well, it was an insurance policy, basically.
Sure.
And I put everything on the line. Okay? These are all loans. And if you can't cover your debt,
you're in trouble.
You basically breach your contract. Anyway, that's what happened. It went through, and things went extremely well. Tom was on the outside of the business. I was on the inside of the business. The business grew tremendously. My father actually gave us a hell of a deal. And that included the real estate. It included the operations, the customers. And my expertise was sales and marketing. I was on the roll already. I continued doing that. We brought in an outside president, which helped us focus on the numbers, where I could spend my time doing what I needed to do, which is grow the company according to our strategy and our vision. So everything worked out. What Harvard really brought to me was all those things encompassing, but it actually taught me how to do deals, first of all, for myself. And then the other thing is Tom's experience of being pushed. He had 15 companies underneath himself, plus a public company called GE. He learned M&A strategies from GE. So here's a experienced guy basically looking at my situation saying, okay, he's got 15 years minimum of M&A activities on the buy side, where I'm on the buy side as a rookie. This is my first major deal. And so guess what? Thank God that we had all this together. We did it right. And if anything, that $100,000, $200,000 investment in 30 years ago in Harvard gave me a lot of confidence to get deals done.
Rock, as we go into 2018, how are you able to help your customers a little better, your clients, with that Harvard education?
It seems like I use it every day. Because of all my lessons, I pass those on to my own kids. In fact, if anything, it really solidified my commitment to education. And I pass that on to my kids. I pass it on to my clients. I try to do the best I can with my connections. And you do things right. Harvard did things right. They pushed you, no doubt about it. But I'll tell you, it was a hell of an education. I'm glad I did it. And with today's strategies of working, they haven't really changed. The game of business hasn't really changed. It's those four components. It's just how you apply them. The integrity of those strategies and executions is key. So I would believe, I've actually recommended OPM, Harvard OPM program to some of my clients. And it just, I don't think people realize today's world at $200,000 investment is a huge, huge investment in not only your personal life, but your career and others. To me, I'm glad I did it in my 30s versus my 60s and 70s, because my clients today, I have clients in their 80s. I can't recommend OPM or Harvard to them because they just won't apply it. But guess who they could apply it to? Their successors, their children, their grandchildren even in succession programs.
And in the meantime, they have you.
Exactly. I enjoyed it. I'm happy that you reminded me it's 30 years already. And I've underestimated the Harvard program to pass on to other people. So if anybody's a poster child for OPM, it's Rock LaManna.
The guy who didn't have any money, who found a way to get to Harvard and then used the experience to buy a business again when you didn't necessarily have any money. You learned how to do it.
That's right.
Great story.
Thank you, Ken.
Rock, if people would like to connect with you, find out more about the LaManna Alliance, what should they do?
First of all, look me up on LinkedIn. Connect with me at LinkedIn. Pop on my website, rocklamanna.com. ROCKLAMANNA.com. Phone numbers on there. Email rock@rocklamanna.com. I have a podcast, as you know. I mean, I'm on and on. LNNW, all over the industry. In fact, I look at myself as print emeritus.
Emeritus, I like that. And I am Ken Okel. You can find out more about me. I do a lot of public speaking on productivity. Go to my website. It's my name, KENOKEL.com. You may have heard me also at the recent Florida Printing Association Awards. I was the voice you heard coming into the crowd.
Awesome.
For now, though, Rock, as we wrap things up, I guess what we need to say is see you in the marketplace.
This is the Prince's Edge with Rock LaManna. Thanks for listening.